Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X research and professional physicist. And today I'd like to bring to you another one of my articles. This one's entitled Scattering, another concept used to cover up Planet X and its effects. Now, recently when I wrote some articles on Earth's increasingly red sky and how it meant that the Earth was dying, I got a few unfriendly comments stating that it was all due to scattering and thus the Earth was not dying at all. Well, that caused me to look into it some more, and what I discovered is that not only does scattering not explain the color of the clouds, it also does not explain the color of the blue sky. It has thus become quite obvious that scattering is another of those physics concepts designed to steer people away from the truth about how the Earth and the universe work, and also so that no one is able to figure out what is happening to the Earth as a result of Planet X. In other words, that it is destroying the Earth. You may look at articles 581 entitled Red Clouds Mean the Earth is Dying, Losing Outer Atmospheric Layer, and article 588 entitled Planet X Will Turn Earth into a Superheated Inferno for more details. And here you see a photograph of orange bulbous clouds in the sky, and some parts are blue. You can see parts there are blue. Looks blue there too. Others are red. There's some red down here and there's some red up there, and there's orange and yellow as well. Now, clouds emit these colors because of ionization, not scattering. Scattering would require the clouds to be illuminated by the color which they then reflect, which is clearly impossible. How can part of the cloud be illuminated by blue light and another by orange light and still another by yellow light? It's clearly impossible. You only have one type of light source illuminating the whole of this atmosphere. And if anything, if you look at these boats here, they all look blue. So the atmosphere here, if anything, is being illuminated by blue light. So if the light source is blue, how can the clouds be yellow, orange, and red? Obviously, they have to be emitting those colors. So instead of scattering, light in the Earth's atmosphere, such as the blue of the sky and color of the clouds, is due to ionization, which is initiated by photons moving through the atmosphere. These used to come from the sun, but sun simulators have now replaced the sun as the sun is no longer shining. And you may look at article 535 entitled The Sun's No Longer Shining, What Has Happened to It, for details on that. In addition, as the matter in the atmosphere emits radiation due to ionization, this radiation will too be able to ionize other atoms. This is possible because the Earth has electron energy levels in its atmosphere, with the highest energy electrons at the highest altitudes. When atoms absorb these electrons, they emit radiation according to which energy level the electron belongs to. Clouds, which are Planet X debris water, absorb energy from photons and become ionized, then absorb atmospheric electrons, which cause the emission of light. The same process used to be behind the blue sky. Nowadays, however, there seems to be a holographic simulation system in place which produces a simulated blue sky. And you may look at article 554 entitled Strange Straight Line Shadows or Evidence of a Simulated Sky. And this is illustrated here, what happens with clouds, how the electrons in the outer energy levels will absorb a photon, and that leads to the electron leaving the atom, which the atom then becomes ionized. It leaves an empty slot there, and then electrons that are part of the Earth's atmosphere and belong to the energy level that the atom is in, and that goes according to altitude, will go into the slot, and as they settle in there, they release a photon, and that's where the light emission comes from. If these are X-ray photon electrons, in other words, they are in the X-ray energy level in the Earth's atmosphere, then most likely we are going to get an X-ray photon being emitted. Nitrogen is the most abundant gaseous element in the Earth's atmosphere. The naturally produced blue sky was due to nitrogen molecules which become ionized due to photons in the atmosphere, then absorb atmospheric electrons which release blue light photons. So this is where the nitrogen layer that would have given rise to the blue sky would have been somewhere at the top of the visible light electron energy level, because blue light is higher in energy than, say, red light. So there would be red light electrons lower down here, and blue here, and the violet ones there. And then on top there will be the ultraviolet electrons in that energy level, or at that altitude. However, water clouds most likely, nitrogen atoms occur, and molecules occur at lower altitudes as well. So the fact that we get mainly visible light coming from the sky, I mean blue light, means that the nitrogen molecules must also have an affinity for blue light electrons. However, with water clouds, most likely as a result of their depleted gravitational energy state, they will have an affinity for all electrons, no matter from which energy level, once light or photons initiate their ionization. Now here is the evidence that shows that our sky is a simulation, and that is we have a patch of sky here with straight line boundaries that is blue. Now, even though I had blue in the title for the article, this cannot be, I had shadow, the word shadow, I used the word shadow, but this cannot be a shadow, because shadows are the absence of light, and thus will always be dark, not colored. So a blue patch means that the sky is being projected. There's actually a projector, a laser projector, holographic projector, projecting that color onto this patch of sky. Now, why would the powers that be use a sky simulation system for the blue sky instead of just illuminating the atmosphere with visible light and letting the nitrogen in the atmosphere produce the blue sky? Even if the blue sky is produced closer to the surface, it should still be possible to produce one. However, it is likely that only a sky simulation is able to hide the many large objects in the Earth's atmosphere, at least those that are higher up in the atmosphere, and camouflage the strangely colored clouds which seem to be occurring more and more. And you see some of that here. You can see there's a blue cloud here, and there's a red cloud there, clearly below this patch that is clearly a simulation. So it's likely that the simulations are used to camouflage these strangely colored clouds. Now here is something which is also very strange. At first it appears to be a perfectly round break in the clouds, but if you look carefully, the surface here, it's a surface and it's convex. In other words, it bulges outwards. So it's actually a Planet X system stellar core in the Earth's atmosphere poking through this layer of clouds, and the layer of clouds would be its own cloud envelope which surrounds the object. It appears to be getting quite thin, so most likely the object is close to losing its envelope, which means that it has already absorbed quite a lot of gravitational energy from the Earth. Now, I initially thought that this was due to blue light being projected upwards onto the object. But now I seem to think that maybe that's not the case. Maybe the actual surface of the stellar core is actually emitting blue light. And this would be because it is absorbing electrons that are blue visible light electrons. So when they settle inside the atoms for the stellar core, they emit blue light. And that may be why it's blue. And you can see some of the blue through here, which would be the surface of the object underneath this cloud layer. Now, the cloud itself is also emitting light. You can see some pink parts none actually look perfectly white. There's pink in all these parts of the cloud. It's some tiny little patches that look a bit more white. So the cloud layer is pink in places and gray in others. There's a lot of gray as well. And the gray would mean that it's that part of the cloud is absorbing light, but it's not emitting light. So the pink part, it's because it's emitting red and blue light, which then looks pink. The cloud that's dark gray is where no photons are being emitted, or very few photons are being emitted. This part here is almost black, so no photons are being emitted from that. Now that could be because the electrons being absorbed are at the correct energy level for the water molecule energy levels, or because no electrons are being absorbed. Since cloud very close to it is emitting light, the former is more likely. I said latter there, but I should have said former. In other words, it's likely that the electrons are at the correct energy and thus are not emitting photons when they settle in the atoms in the cloud. So the water molecules in the gray cloud have gained enough gravitational energy so that the electrons settling in are not emitting photons. I initially, as I said, thought the blue color was due to a projector, but now I think that this object is actually emitting blue light from its surface. Now, so in conclusion, it seems that scattering is another physics concept purposely invented to keep people from finding out the truth regarding Planet X. Instead of scattering, ionization and Earth electron energy levels in the atmosphere were responsible for the naturally produced blue sky. And these are the references. This is Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X physicist. Thank you for watching.